An astrologer I follow on Twitter recently posted about the planet Uranus going retrograde, which indicates a period of massive change in the society. Now, in the world of astrology, Uranus is said to rule radical ideas as well as revolutionary events that upset established structures. And as if on cue, the government of India, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has announced one of the boldest reforms in his tenure to reset the election calendar for the entire governance machinery by adopting the resolution for one nation, one election. In addition to this, another economic attack has been unleashed on two big business houses in India, the Adani Group and the Vedanta Group, by a non-profit organization called Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, along the lines of the infamous Hindenburg report. And speaking of revolutions, how can we not talk about entrepreneurship, which essentially lives in the spirit of breaking all rules and solving complicated challenges in the hope of getting a massive economic reward that no traditional job can offer. My name is Prathamesh and I'm the founder of the Civilization Project. Today, I'm going to talk about these three decisions which will heavily alter our experience of reality. For I fundamentally believe it is our choices which define our destiny. On 31st August 2023, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, or OCCRP, reported two stories on Indian business houses, the Adani Group and the Vedanta Group. The report on Adani Group can be seen as a follow-up to the infamous Hindenburg report, which caused quite some furor in India. This report made a slew of allegations against the Adani Group, including stock price manipulation, violation of India's securities laws, and accounting fraud. Following this report, the stock price of Adani Group of companies crashed heavily, wiping off almost $125 billion in market value. But the Securities Exchange Board of India, SEBI, is investigating 24 matters related to this case, and they will present its findings in the court soon. This will also include a report on all the short sellers who benefited from the crash of the Adani Group of companies. Now, this latest report of OCCRP has presented more information on this case by naming four investment funds based in Mauritius and their promoters, alleging that these individuals have very close business ties with Mr. Adani. And together they have colluded to manipulate the prices of Adani stocks and made a lot of profit. This entire argument thus hinges on one thing: whether these investors should be treated as a part of the promoter group, which would take the total tally of promoter holdings above 75%, a clear violation of India's securities laws. For the uninitiated, publicly listed companies in India need to have at least 25% of non-promoter holdings in the company, meaning institutional investors and common retail investors like us. Now, the question I have is this: if you look at any company in India or across the globe, close ties between institutional investors and promoters are not unheard of. Even the fact that the investment funds establish their bases in tax friendly geographies like Mauritius and Dubai is not breaking news. Even more importantly, close relations between investors and promoters or founders are a feature of building strong, resilient companies, where both can mutually benefit from their respective areas of specialization. And in light of India's growing strength in the international arena, attacks on India's business houses to weaken our economy is a pretty much textbook move. Now, this report on Vedanta, which essentially talk about their lobbying effort to allow an increase in mining production, is even more weak. Lobbying by societies and companies alike is a common feature of any political society. If you look at the United States or European countries, lobbying is in fact a big business. We've all heard of the heroic tales of the pharma lobby, the military industry complex, the tobacco lobby, the oil lobby, and the automotive lobby, which have influenced domestic and international political decisions for decades at large. I think, as law abiding citizens of India, or even the shareholders of these two companies, these are the decisions we should really care about. 1. Are the investigating agencies in India doing their jobs faithfully and without interference? 2. Are the judicial bodies in India making decisions on these kind of cases with complete fairness? Number three, development comes at a cost. When making decisions as a nation state, there are no absolutely good decisions. There are only trade offs to select from. So, despite all the lobbying, is our nation state making decisions in our national interest? And are they making adequate provisions to compensate for the trade offs they are selecting? Number four, are the companies we buying shares of disclosing all relevant information with complete honesty? Number five, are the promoters of the said companies acting in good faith to create and protect value for all their shareholders? Or are they running Ponzi schemes where they will benefit at the cost of unassuming common folk like us? Please remember that the geopolitics of today is all about managing conflicting national interests. And our domestic homegrown businesses are a big source of strength and capacity to protect our national interest. Having said that, let's move on to one of the biggest decisions by our nation state, which is to reset the entire election calendar of our governing machinery. The Parliamentary Affairs Minister of NDA government, Mr. Prahlad Joshi, announced in the late evening of 31st August that a special sitting of the Parliament has been called for 5 days between 18th to 22nd September. After a lot of speculation, the government has announced on the morning of 1st September that they have set up a panel of 6 members led by our ex-president Mr. Ramnath Kovind to explore the possibility of one election for the entire governing machinery in India. Let me elaborate a little more on this. We have two major levels of policy making in India. Level 1 is the central government, comprising of the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. The members of the Lok Sabha are elected representatives from all the states and union territories in a public election every 5 years. The members of the Rajya Sabha, on the other hand, are elected by the legislative assemblies of the states and union territories. Along with this, the president can appoint 12 members at his or her discretion. Members of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are called MPs or members of the parliament. This brings us to level 2, which is all the state governments or legislative assemblies. The members of all state assemblies are also elected in a public election, and its members are called members of legislative assemblies or MLAs. Now, the root of this debate lies here. Till 1967, our election calendar was pretty much stable, where we had only one election year for both Lok Sabha and state assemblies. However, the period from 1967 to 1999 was a politically turbulent time in India. The process of reorganization of states from the regional princely states was heavily underway. In the middle of all of this, a lot of legislative assemblies were prematurely dissolved in the years 1968 and 1969. In addition to this, in 7 out of 10 instances, the Lok Sabha did not even complete its full tenure. The shortest was that of VP Singh, which lasted hardly for 2 years. And the longest was that of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, which during the period of emergency was extended to be almost 6 years long. As a result of all of this, the entire election calendar of our country was messed up. And what we have now is some or the other election every year. The biggest challenge this causes is to the political stability of our nation and states, where political and electoral compulsions direct a variety of decisions by our administration. And this applies to all political parties. Now, ever since the panel of resetting our election calendar has been announced, the opposition has started shouting about a long list of complaints. Right from how this decision is being made because Mr. Modi has panicked at the potential of the newly formed India Alliance, to how BJP is actually not a Hindu-friendly party because they've planned this special parliamentary session in the middle of Ganesh festival. I cannot disagree that all of these arguments are really hilarious. If I were one of the opposition parties, these would be the issues which I would definitely raise to the BJP. 1. 16 states have seen fresh elections conducted since May 2021, which means they've not even completed 2 years of their 5-year term. If the election calendar is reset right now, how will these state governments be compensated? It is fair to assume that the party in power in the center, meaning BJP, will get fair bit of advantage with one single election across the board. Now, 6 out of these 16 states are currently ruled by non BJP governments. Will there be an extension awarded to run these state governments till 2029? Number 2. The Solicitor General, in the ongoing Supreme Court case on Article 370, has submitted on record that the central government is ready to conduct fresh elections in the Union territories of Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh. If the election calendar is reset under the One Nation, One Election scheme, will the elections in these two Union territories also be conducted along with the rest of the country? Number 3. The voter in India, against common perception, is a very smart voter. And the voters in India do know how to separate between a good agenda for development for the state versus that of the entire nation. In the past, we've seen our voters vote for different parties in the central government and state government. But considering one election for both the Lok Sabha and all the states in the country, what are the specific rules being implemented to regulate the campaign strategies for national and state elections? Number 4. Both at the center and at state assemblies, the country has witnessed defections by elected representatives, leading to premature dissolutions of Lok Sabha and state assemblies. What are the changes being made to anti-defection laws to ideally prevent but practically manage these premature dissolutions and avoid disruptions to the election calendar in the future? Number 5. In case of any future reorganization of the states or union territories in the middle of the election year, what are the provisions being made in order to maintain the sanctity of One Nation, One Election? For any more ideas on questions to be raised, please write to me and I'll be happy to share more ideas. But the topic of ideas brings me to the last story of today. In the year 2014, I quit my first job at Mu Sigma. I left this job with only one single objective: to start my own business. And one day build a conglomerate like that of the Tatas and Birlas and Ambanis of our country. Now, this last part is overly ambitious, I know. But I'm just being very truthful here. This was the primary motivation why I wanted to start my own business and not do a traditional job. In the last 9 years, I have tried working with many business ideas. Right from wanting to start a custom bike design business to an aggregator platform for all online long distance courses to fighting climate change. And in all genuine honesty, I failed to even start implementing most of these ideas. My first real experience with implementing an idea was my first venture all the way in Egypt, where we were trying to set up something similar to Oyo rooms for the Egyptian market. This was back in 2016. The reason I'm sharing the story is this. In the last few years, the enthusiasm to start our own business has grown tremendously. More and more youngsters want to start their own companies rather than do a traditional job, which is a very healthy sign for our country. I remember there was a time not so long ago when starting a business was a taboo in India, where every business owner was assumed to be a crook and a corrupt individual who would exploit their employees for their own benefit, where they will treat all their employees as their slaves and themselves live a life of luxury. You have no idea how pleased I am to see this tide turning, where starting a business has moved from being a social taboo to being a top preference for a career choice. I just wanted to share one observation from my experience with all my failures. My dear fellow entrepreneurs, especially those coming with no background in business in their family, it is a very natural trap for us to fall in love with our ideas. It is a beautiful sign that we can turn our mere ideas into billion-dollar businesses inside our head. But trust me, simply falling in love with our ideas does not work at all. In fact, most of our ideas are generally driven by external triggers, derived from someone else who has been running similar businesses, derived from investors preferring to invest in certain kind of businesses, deriving from our near and dear ones hyping us up on how sexy the idea is. But, and a very big but this one is, turning an idea into a self-sustaining business takes a minimum of 7 to 10 years. In this time, markets will change, people will change, governments will change, and the preferences for investors will change. Even the employees you hire, the products and services you offer will drastically change in quantity and in quality. The only constant throughout this entire journey is you, my dear friend. And if the business idea you have decided to work on is not connected deeply with your purpose for life, it is impossible to see through this roller coaster of a journey. If this business idea of yours is not derived from your deepest reserve of intrinsic motivation, trust me, you will face a situation every 3 months that will make you give up on your business idea, and you will. If you start asking around, you'll find hundreds of startup enthusiasts who wanted to build a unicorn, but they gave up in 3 months, 6 months, a year, or two. Statistically speaking, 99% of startups fail by the third year from inception. But if the problem you decide to solve is driven by your deepest sense of purpose for life, only then can you think of turning that into a self sustaining business over the next 7 to 10 years. And if you're a crazy guy like me who wants to build a conglomerate, we are talking of at least 30 to 40 years of our life devoted to our business. I will end by saying this. If you want to start your own business, I will be your biggest supporter. But my only question to you will be, what is the source of the business idea you want to work on? As an entrepreneur, that is the single most important decision you will make at the start of your startup journey. If you're still watching this video, my deepest gratitude. I hope I have been able to add value to your life in these last few minutes. I consider time as the most important currency, and I'm grateful that you spend time listening to me. As a student of decision making, I now clearly know that our experience of reality is constructed by the decisions we make on 5 levels. Starting with the decisions we make for ourselves, followed by the decisions we make as teams, then as a society, then nation states, and finally the global decisions we make for the civilization. The entire human civilization. From Putin's war in Ukraine to your decision to watch this entire video, our choices are defining our destiny. And hence it follows that the health of our civilization depends on the quality of our decisions. If you've liked this video, please do consider liking this video and sharing it with your friends and family. If there are specific decisions that you are struggling with, feel free to write to me. I'll be more than happy to help you out. My name is Prathamesh and I'm the founder of the Civilization Project. See you next time.